Utility styles are a huge trend this year. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you too can get in on this trend by simply adding patch pockets to your clothes. I'm going to break down how to draft and sew a couple of the most popular cargo style pockets. So let's jump right in. To demonstrate, I'll be using two pairs of thrifted denim pants in contrasting colors so you can see exactly what I'm doing. To start, we need to map out our pockets to figure out where we want them and what size to make them. You could add them wherever you like, however, cargo pockets are typically added around the hip and knee areas, so that's where I'll be adding them. So we're going to try on our pants and pin a safety pin around the knee area. You only need to do this on one leg and use it as a guide for the other. For this, you'll need your tape measure and pins. Starting with the hip pocket, I didn't have much room at the waist, so I measured 2 inches across the top and marked it with a pin. From there, I brought the tape measure down, stopping at the crotch, then used pins to mark the line for the length of my pocket. I did the same for the other side as well, sticking pins along the width of the pocket. As for the pocket opening, I used the pins and made it curved freehand. And this is just to give you a visual idea of how the pocket will look. At this point, you can make any adjustments you want. If your cell phone fits, then I'd say it's a perfect size. Next, you take and jot down the measurements for your pocket and be sure to add 5/8 inch to each side for allowance. You can map out the knee pocket as well. This is where the safety pin comes in handy. Knee pockets are typically centered on the pants side seam with half the pocket to the front and the other half towards the back. Once you're happy with the size, jot down the length and width. Starting with the hip pocket, draw a rectangle using your length and width measurement. Then measure and mark the top width. Next, measure and mark the side length of your pocket. Then from there, draw a curved line as shown to create the pocket opening. You could also do the slanted pocket version. Now that you have your pattern ready to go, cut 2 from your fabric, making sure you have a left and a right facing pocket. Before attaching the pocket, we have to first finish the opening. The proper way to finish the curve would be to line the pocket, but I wanted to avoid adding another layer. So I clipped the curve within the seam allowance, then folded over and sewed the edge. For the other sides, fold over the allowance on the wrong side and press to keep them in place. To attach the pockets, pin them in place, making sure they're laying flat. Then double check that they're symmetrical before sewing them. It can be a little tricky sewing them on, so I'll share a few quick tips. 1. Go slow and occasionally check that nothing is catching underneath. 2. Use the edge of the pocket as a guide to get a clean finish. And 3. Make sure the needle is down when adjusting your garment. One other thing, I highly recommend you hand sew a basting stitch around your pocket beforehand. To draft the 3D version, draw a rectangle the length and width of your pocket, adding 3 inches to the length and width. Next, draw and cut 1-inch squares from the bottom corners. As for the flap, draw a rectangle the width and length of your pocket measurements by 4 inches in length. I finished the corners first by sewing a 1/2 inch from the edge. This is what gives it that 3D look. I then turn the bottom and sides over by a 1/2 inch, then 1 inch, and press. I finished the top a little different, adding facing instead of including the allowance to reduce bulk on the sides. However, you could cut out the corners, then fold the top over twice by 1/2 inch, then 1 inch, and sew. Next, sew along the top edge on all 3 sides. I'll show you how to do it in one go. First, make sure the side you're sewing, the corner is folded and laying flat. When you get to the very corner, stop with the needle down, then lift the pocket and rotate it to the other side. Afterwards, push the corner over to the opposite side so it's once again laying flat before continue sewing. Now, using the safety pin we placed earlier as our guide, place the pocket over the knee area, making sure it's centered over the side seam before pinning it in place. Fold the sides of your pocket in half to locate exactly where to pin them. This part can be a little tricky. I had my other hand in the pant leg while doing this to help. Double check that all the sides are lined up correctly, then sew on the pocket using the same technique shown earlier for the corners. Once again, I suggest hand basting your pocket on first. Next, reinforce the top corners to strengthen these ears and keep the pocket from flopping around. You can sew a small triangle or rectangle. I just sewed roughly an inch down on top of the edge seam. For the flap, I cut one piece from a lightweight fabric for my lining to reduce bulk. I also went ahead and ironed on the fusible interfacing to the lining to give the flap some structure. Now with right sides facing, secure them together with pins or wonder clips and sew 3 sides leaving the top open. Afterwards, clip both corners, then turn the flap over on the right side and use the tip of your scissors to get the corners out. Next, sew a row or 2 of top stitching along the edge. Before attaching the flap, fold and press a 1/2 inch allowance on top. Place it approximately 1.5 inches above your pocket, making sure they are aligned before pinning in the crease. Sew right along the crease to attach the flap. Then cut down the allowance to a 1/4 inch and top stitch 1/2 inch from the edge. Last thing you'll need to do is to add your closure. You could install the snaps last, but if you choose to do Velcro or buttons, that's something you want to add before sewing on the pocket and flap. For the pleated version, draw a rectangle the length and width of your pocket, adding 1 inch to the length and 3 inches to the width. To create the pleat, first draw a line down the center, then draw a line 1 inch away on both sides of the center line and another set 1/2 inch away. This pocket will need facing, so draw another rectangle the width of your pocket plus 1 inch by 1.5. As for the flap, draw one more rectangle the width of your pocket plus 1 inch by 4 inches in length. The facing and flap should be smaller than your drafted pocket. After cutting out your pocket, transfer the pattern lines, except for the center line, to the top and bottom of your fabric as shown. Now take your scissors and snip the lines approximately 1/4 inch from the edge. Starting with the inner cut lines, fold to form a crease, then press. From there, do the same for the outer lines as shown. Doing this should form a box pleat. If you wanted to do the inverted pleat instead, then all you need to do is turn it inwards. Next, fold the pleat flat and sew the top and bottom to secure them in place. Now we're going to add our facing. So I realized afterwards that I made an error here, but basically the facing should be the same width as the top, and you'd attach it as you see here, sewing a 1/2 inch from the edge. My facing was still usable, it's just that the corners would have been neatly tucked away. After that, turn the allowance over for the other sides and press. Lastly, top stitch along the edge of your pocket. Now it's ready to go. Like the 3D version, I centered it over the side seam before pinning it in place. Sew along the sides as shown, making sure to reinforce those top corners. Again, I recommend hand basting it before heading over to your machine. The flap you would make and attach in the same way we did for the 3D pocket. The pointed version is another popular one you could do as well. On a side note, I felt my pants could use a little more contrast, so I added the waistband from the other pair. And as a result, I moved my hip pockets up to blend with it. I think it was so worth it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I styled my cargos with 2 other DIYs. You can check out those videos on my channel. Also, if you want to see a no-sew way I turned the pants hem into joggers, I did a short on that as well. I hope I made it easy enough for you to want to give it a try. However, if you're not up to the task of making your own, for a limited time, you can grab a pocket above. All you'd have to do is to figure out where you want to add them. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.